Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whenever this finds you. I want to welcome you to Mornings with the Murph, baby. I am your host, Sean Murphy, and today we have a stacked show. One of my best friends slash co-hosts of the Morning Woodward show, Jeff Iafrate, is coming on to talk about the Detroit Lions, the improvements they made over this past year, and what they need to do to be playing in the big game themselves in the next few years. Speaking of the big game, we're going to be talking a whole lot about that too. We're going to be breaking down the matchup between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs. What exactly the Chiefs and Eagles are going to need to do in order to pull off the victory, and start maybe hinting at who I'm going to be picking when I make my prediction on Friday. And I wouldn't be Sean if we didn't talk at least a little bit of basketball. I mean, come on, are you kidding me? So of course we're going to talk what's the latest news of the NBA trade deadline, potential deals that we could see coming down the pipeline, and also all the latest bat shenanigans that we see with Kyrie Irving. But first, let's start with the big game. Super Bowl 57. The Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles. I really do believe that at the end of it all, we did get to do the two best teams in the National Football League. And a lot of times when I look at NFL matchups, and a lot of times when we often look at NFL matchups, it's often easy to look at it like it's a prize fight, because just like in boxing, styles make fights. And in this particular matchup, I think it's going to come down to a couple simple things. First of all, the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs are both number 1 and number 2 in getting to the quarterback. But the Philadelphia Eagles are historically great. Over the course of this season, the Philadelphia Eagles have gotten to the quarterback over 11% of passing plays, which is the highest percentage since the 1984 Chicago Bears. This defense is terrifying, and it's stacked from top to bottom. First of all, their pass rushing talent is elite, and it's not to be outdone by their veteran corners that are all pros as well. One of them in particular being Darius Slay, which, by the way, I'm still really mad that we traded Big Play Slay. At the time, I remember thinking it was really dumb. People were like, oh, well, he's going to get older, so he's going to have a steep decline. No, he's still that guy, but that's a long gone conversation. But it's going to come down to those matchups within the trenches, specifically, how both teams are able to handle each other's pass rush, and if each other's quarterback can have time to get things done and can overcome the injuries that they're coming into this game with. And I think in particular, it's ultimately going to come down to, can Patrick Mahomes get time to work? Because with the Philadelphia Eagles, yes, Jalen Hurts is the cog in the wheel that ultimately makes that offense go, but you still have guys like A.J. Brown. You still have guys like Devontae Smith. You still have guys like Miles Sanders. You still have that running option scheme that's been one of the most effective run option offenses that we've seen in the history of this league. So even though the Chiefs I believe they're ranked 8th or 9th in the NFL in defending the rush, and they've shown that they can do that, and shown over the course of the playoffs that they've been a bend and not break style defense. We've really never seen the Kansas City Chiefs be in a situation where they're actively being blown out. So I don't know if we can say that the Eagles are going to be able to run away with this one. And I also feel like Andy Reid has to be having flashbacks to when the Kansas City Chiefs offensive line was just beaten to shreds, and when Patrick Mahomes couldn't have any time to throw in that Super Bowl against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and now going against an even better pass rush, with absolutely brutal weapons, guys like Hassan Riddick, Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat. Bloody hell, man. This team is terrifying. But on the other side, let's remember who the Kansas City Chiefs are. Despite the fact of not having Tyreek Hill, Patrick Mahomes arguably had the best season of his career. The number one offense, the number 5 defense. This team, they made Joe Burrow look incredibly pedestrian a couple weeks ago in order to get to the Super Bowl. And this is a team that a lot of people assumed weren't even going to win their own division. And then they went out and won the same amount of games as the Philadelphia Eagles. And to their credit, even though they didn't have to pay Tyreek Hill, they were able to improve and bolster their offensive line. It's still not nearly the quality of the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line with, guys like Jason Kelce on their line, who's, an absolute all-pro, multiple tackles and guards that are at the best of their craft. I mean, the Eagles offensive line is downright dominant. But the Kansas City Chiefs offensive line is certainly not the same one that got beaten up a couple of years ago. The thing is, though, is that Patrick Mahomes, not only is he going to have to be at the top of his game in order for the Kansas City Chiefs to get this win done, he's also going to need excellence from everyone else around him. I mean, let's not get it twisted. Travis Kelce's going to be effective one way or another. Patrick Mahomes does have one of the best centers in all of football, so he does have that stability in front of him too. But his starting running back is a 7th-round pick. His wideouts, even though he has guys like Juju Smith-Schuster, and even though they've been able to more than hold their own and catch plenty of touchdowns as a collective over this season, it's still not Tyreek Hill. And they're still going up against some of the best corners and one of the best secondaries in the National Football League. And so this matchup is extremely fascinating because on one hand, how do you bet against the greatness of Patrick Mahomes? How do you overlook the significant lopsided advantage that the Kansas City Chiefs have at quarterback, which all due respect to Jalen Hurts and everything that he's done for the Philadelphia Eagles, which, by the way, again, I think Jalen Hurts is one of the best stories in all of sports over the last few years. I mean, Jalen Hurts getting benched in the national championship game in favor of Tua Tagovailoa, who gets it done and then takes his starting job. He has to transfer to another college. He goes to Oklahoma, and then he goes and gets a Heisman candidate caliber season. He balls out for Oklahoma, gets drafted in the NFL draft, and now is able to go and have an MVP caliber season for the Philadelphia Eagles. When being drafted, no one thought that Jalen Hurts was going to be a good quarterback in the NFL. I mean, people thought he wasn't the best quarterback at his own college. And now to be in this position where he's representing the NFC. I mean, all the accomplishments in the world, but when you're looking at both quarterbacks coming in hobbled, really the one that's going to be at the biggest disadvantage is if Jalen Hurts is not fully ready to go, because that run option scheme is only as effective as his legs are going to let him be. And sure, you still have other guys you can get the ball. You have A.J. Brown, you have Devontae Smith, you have Miles Sanders. You still can distribute the ball to your playmakers and make stuff happen. But at the same time, you're asking an awful lot on those guys. And if they can't get something done, I mean, Jalen Hurts, a lot of times he was able to take plays that were broken and make them broken for his team. And that's the thing. Like, if he's not able to break the game himself, that's definitely gonna hurt the Eagles quite a bit. However, because of the excellence of their offensive line, because of the fact that you would expect that even though Kansas City is probably going to come in with a really good scheme and is going to scheme specifically against their rush attack, and they're probably going to make Jalen Hurts try to beat them over the air, which, I mean, he definitely has the weapons to do so. The question's going to be, can he get the ball to them? And on the flip side, Kansas City Chiefs, the second best pass rush in the NFL. Can they get to the quarterback? Can they cause pressure? Can they keep Patrick Mahomes in a manageable enough situation to where he can go and try and put his team over the top? And it's going to be, in my opinion, I think it's going to be one of the best Super Bowls we've seen in quite a while. Again, I still don't want to give my prediction just yet, but I do want to just at least wrap up this conversation by saying the real winners of this all is going to be us, the football fans, because we get to sit back and watch two of the best teams in the world just go at it like all hell. We get to see Rihanna kick ass at halftime. And then, even though we won't be able to see good football again until August or September, I mean, sure, we'll have the AFL and eventually we'll have the XFL and the USFL and whatever, all these, B-rate football leagues come up that will, get that little hit for us football junkies. But at the end of it all, we're going to be blessed with some really good football this Sunday. And I'm really excited to talk about it here. I'm excited to go even further in depth with my guy Jeff here in a second. Stick around. Mornings with the Murph continues here right in a second. Joining me now on Mornings with the Murph is the co-host of the Morning Woodward Show, but also the co-host of From Half Court, but most importantly, my friend, Jeff Iafrate, boy wonder, cash money, sitting over there in the crib. Jeff, thanks so much for being here, my guy.
Dude, I appreciate you. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm hanging out in the, we talked about it before, but the cat's out the bag. This is Sheila Ham's house.
Yeah, of course.
Yep. Over.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just vibing, in our living room.
Yeah. Yeah. S Money, she just was like, she hit you up and was like, yo, Jeff, what's popping? Want to stay in my crib? Because that's definitely how Sheila Ford Hemp talks. But speaking of Sheila Ford Hemp, I do want to talk Detroit Lions with you here in a little bit. I know people are used to us talking about basketball, but Jeff, you are one of the best minds in Detroit, one of the best up and coming young analysts that we have. So I wanted to bring you in and talk about the Lions, but also there's a pretty big game happening this Sunday. I'm not sure if you saw, but this Super Bowl thing, they're putting it on again. They decided they decided it was profitable enough. They could throw it another year.
Yeah, just another casual game. I'll tune in just because I have to. You know what I mean?
Of course. Yeah, I'll fit it in my schedule.
I got nothing else to do.
Yeah, of course. No, Jeff, this Super Bowl, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not giving my prediction personally until Friday's episode. I am having a really difficult time coming up with a prediction because this game is such a coin flip, but at the same time has many different layers that can ultimately decide the outcome. For me, like personally, I look right to, I know where everyone looks at the quarterbacks and looks at the talent of Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes, two MVP caliber players. But for me, Jeff, I look at the two pass rushes that are coming into this game. I mean, the Philadelphia Eagles have gotten to the quarterback on 11% of pass rush attempts, which is the most since the 84 Bears, Jeff.
Yeah.
And then the only team that was close to them this year was the Chiefs.
Yep.
And so, like, when you look at it, man, there's a lot of different layers to this. I want to start with, where's your head at with this Super Bowl and with this matchup?
Two interesting narratives. One with the Chiefs, the Patrick Mahomes narrative, and his start to his career through the first 5 years. The only person similar and has a better start is Tom Brady. So the big one for me is Patrick. It started, previously facing the Bengals, the narrative of Joe Burrow versus Patrick Mahomes. Now Mahomes is here. It's his third Super Bowl. He won one, he lost one, and now there's a lot of pressure, not only with him, but you got Andy Reid facing his former team as well, the Eagles. And then on the flip side, you got the Eagles. And don't forget the Kelsey brothers. That's always going to be a storyline, obviously.
Yeah.
But with the Eagles and what they've built as a roster, and me and Adam have talked about this at length, and how there's no weaknesses with this Philadelphia roster. There just isn't. I mean, if you really want to talk about weaknesses in the amount of pressure that's on the Eagles, I think it starts with Jalen Hurts. I think, for Hurts in his entire career through college, he's always been overlooked. I know he's going to be motivated, but this is a big game for him. I mean, he's only thrown, I believe, like 300 yards total in the playoffs. So we haven't seen Jalen have to go out and win a game in the postseason. So a lot of pressure on both sides, but to me, more pressure on the Eagles personally.
Yeah, for sure. I think with Jalen Hurts, you brought up, like he's going to be a big X factor also because of the fact, Jeff, he's not coming into this game 100%. And even though Patrick Mahomes also isn't coming in 100% either, one thing we've seen about Patrick Mahomes already in the short time in his career is he has one of the greatest pain tolerances in the history of sports, you could argue, with some of the stuff this guy's done already. And we've seen already with him playing on a high ankle sprain, even if he's not the same Patrick Mahomes, he's still a very productive version of Patrick Mahomes. And is the reason why they're in this game in the first place, right? But like you said, that roster is so dominant from the top down. Like, quite literally, the NFC Championship wasn't even a contest because Hassan Riddick and that pass rush didn't let it be a contest.
No.
And you talk about how really the only type of game plan I can see, for Kansas City on their end, in which, to their credit, has a lot better of a defense than people give them credit for. I mean, they don't give up high contesting games. They stay very close, like generally within one possession. And them coming into this game and them having to deal with the rush attack that Philly has and having to play more man when they have
Yep.
Devontae Smith and AJ Brown on the edges. I mean, Jeff, if I'm the defensive coordinator of the Kansas City Chiefs, I do not envy their job at
Now,
all.
and that's the tough part, right? They have what, 2 or 3 rookie corners starting for the Chiefs, and think about that
Yeah.
for a second too, and what they're doing with those guys. It's credit to coaching, but as well as you compare both of these rosters, you talk about the offensive line. I would say that the Eagles have the best. The Chiefs are up there as well with the Lions, of course. You talk about receivers. Well, there's not really any conversation. Like you just mentioned, not only just A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, but you got Dallas Goedert. They have an efficient run game, what they can do, and even Jalen Hurts getting involved in the run game. For the Chiefs, they're banged up at receiver. Like McCole Hardman probably won't be available. Juju's on one leg, and you have Travis Kelce who can't do it all by himself. I mean, you saw the Bengals pretty much double Kelce and say, all right, anybody else, come beat us, and you're gonna have to figure it out. And now the Eagles with their personnel and their secondary. I mean, you got Bradbury, Slay, CJ Gardner-Johnson. They got guys. So that's the.
Yeah.
I mean, the rosters. If you actually break it down, in some areas they're very similar, but there's other areas where they're vastly different. And I could argue even at the quarterback position, I like Hurts. But there's Mahomes and then there's Hurts. There's tiers to this, and it's a back and forth. It's closer than I think people give it credit for. They look at the Eagles and they say, well, the Eagles are too damn stacked. They have too much talent, and they're right. But to your point, the Chiefs pass rush. I think the Chiefs overall as a roster, they do get slept on because there's a lot of guys that are under. I mean, they have a 7th round rookie starting at running back, and Isaiah Pacheco. Like they're getting value out of players that you might not have expected to.
Right, exactly. And the fact that, in the fact that they were coming into a season where not only did people not expect them to be in this position, people didn't expect the Kansas City Chiefs to win their division.
Right.
I mean, like if you recall, like a lot of the popular predictions were that the Chiefs were going to be 3rd in their division this year. And the fact that they were able to win 14 games and be in this position now, yes, they were able to bolster and improve that offensive line and get better around the margins with the money that they were using to pay Tyreek Hill. And I think ultimately this matchup might be the deciding factor on if they were happy with that decision or not, because you are putting a lot of trust in the likes of Juju Smith-Schuster and these other guys to go out and make plays. Because yes, Travis Kelce, he's going to have 1 or 2 big catches at the very least. You know that he's a big game player. He's going to be ready for the moment at some point. However, like you said, like Patrick Mahomes is a magician, but even he's going to need, even magicians need their sidekick to do their job.
Yeah. And you look at matchups too, like don't forget, and I know Brandon Ayuk's getting a lot of attention for the comments he made about, I would bet my house and everything I have on the Chiefs. They just played the Eagles. And of course, we know what happened, Brock Purdy being injured. But don't forget that defense that Jalen Hurts faced. I know Brock got injured, but they didn't have to pass the ball a lot. But Mahomes faced that defense as well, that 49ers defense early in the year. Completely blew them out. So people, I don't like the narrative of Pat Mahomes against this Eagles defense. Oh, they're going to show him it's going to be tough for him. I do believe it'll be tougher, but come on, guys. I mean, Mahomes has lit up good defenses before.
I mean, I think last year, I like when Patrick Mahomes was maybe having those turnover issues and was getting a little more reckless with things. I think there was a little bit of an overcorrection after, because I think people were just pouncing and waiting for Patrick Mahomes to fail. Right. And then once they saw him get heavy on the turnovers and the interception rate was going up and his effectiveness was going down, they're like, see, told you this guy's mid. He doesn't quite have it up here. And then he goes out and has arguably the best season of his career and showed, if anything, like we talk all the time about the intangibles and everything that he has physically on the football field. By the way, he's also by far, the quarterback that evades pressure the most out of anyone in the league. The fact that, Sean Payton spoke about how they secretly, went on an airplane home, didn't want anyone to know they were there. They put so much scheme and different concepts on his plate. And he went through and explained all of them, said he was the best single quarterback he ever saw in front of a whiteboard. Like the fact he's saying that about Patrick Mahomes, I don't think anything the Eagles can throw at Patrick Mahomes will surprise him.
Right.
It's just the matter of, can he stay upright long enough to get the ball to his receivers.
Mm-hmm. And I think the most impressive thing also about Mahomes is how he's still getting better, even after all the success he's had and production he's had. You lose Tyreek Hill, and he even mentioned this. He went on First Things First and talked about his adjustment not having Tyreek Hill now. And it seems like you always have Tyreek there for a shot down the field. Now it's different. Like you have Travis Kelce. He has to almost play quarterback, if that makes sense, and read defenses. And he's doing that at a high level, even with Juju back in the regular season. Juju, McCole Hardman, Sky Moore, guys that they're all right. They're not number ones. You got Travis Kelce, who's your true number one. But Patrick Mahomes' ability to just decipher defenses and pick through, get the ball out quickly, and like you said, extend plays. He has everything. He's the most, to me at least, I know some people would say this, but others would disagree. He is the most talented quarterback I've ever seen. And what he can do. So
yeah, he's the greatest quarterback talent to ever live.
Absolutely.
I think whether or not he's the greatest quarterback of all time, that remains to be seen. But when we talk about the complete package and what's the most impressive looking football player I've ever seen, it's Patrick Mahomes. It just is, until proven otherwise. It's kind of like the Victor Wembanyama thing. It's like he might be the most impressive basketball player I've ever watched, and I've only seen a couple games of his. He's only 18 or 19 years old. He has the potential to be the greatest of all time. Doesn't mean he is quite yet, right? But I mean, obviously, it's different when Patrick Mahomes is Super Bowl champion. Victor, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
but
when
Jeff,
you look at skill set, right?
Exactly. Jeff, let's move on and let's talk about the team that we really care about, the Detroit Lions. And the thing that really stuck with me, and I talked about it a little bit in the first episode, is that the big thing that sticks out to me this Super Bowl is that for the first time in my life, after that Packers game to end the season, I can see a foreseeable path for the Detroit Lions to be playing important playoff games and perhaps even be playing in a Super Bowl one day. And it's not like anything's changed. It's not like this is the most talented roster we've ever had. It's not like this is the most talent we've had in one time in Detroit. I mean, in 2014, when we had Ndamukong Suh, Nick Fairley, like even when we had all of those guys, Jeff, I never believed that team could win a playoff game, even with all the talent they had. But with this group, with this front office, with this coaching staff, like there's just something different here. I touched a little bit in the first episode of what I think it is, but what stands out to you? What makes this not the same old Lions, and what to you are the things that they can build on and makes this potential to be something special?
I think what separates them already is them relating, or at least trying to relate to the identity of the city. That's a big part of it. I mean, whether people want to admit it or not, Dan Campbell, perfect guy. I mean, everyone knows how much of a character he is, but he truly represents Detroit and what they're about. The grit, the grind, and Brad Holmes echoes that. So they're both in alignment, and it's crazy too because they weren't hired together. They were hired one at a time, and they still have a fantastic relationship. And from a GM perspective, Brad Holmes is his talent to identify players late in the draft is something that we have never seen with this franchise. It simply does not exist. We've seen it with good franchises, the Chargers, the Bills, the Chiefs, Isaiah Pacheco we just brought up. Guys, that's a normal thing for good organizations. This is new for the Detroit Lions. And not just that, working the cap. Like the Lions have continuously not just shot themselves in the foot on the field, but shot themselves in the foot in the front office as well. Brad seems to be doing everything. It's a completely different process. And that's, I think, what people are seeing. It's like, oh, we're doing stuff that these organizations do. And I think that's where the confidence is coming from, because now you're seeing the players develop and pan out. I mean, you could go on and on about all the guys he found. And that's the biggest thing to me is not only what they can do, obviously Dan and going 8-2 down the stretch. We know he can coach. At least we've seen a flash of it. Brad, we've seen him being able to identify talent. He'll have some money to spend. We'll see what he does with that. Like those guys, they check the boxes on the field, but off the field is the most important thing to me, because both those guys, man, perfect human beings. And that's why I think Sheila deserves a ton of credit. And Chris Spielman and Barry Sanders, everyone that helped out, but her just ability to pivot and move away, because she's still the Fords technically. I mean, she's Hamp, but that staying there with the Fords and what's been with this franchise over a long period of time, they seem to kind of correct and go from that over in really just 2 years. So that's been the most impressive part to me. It's different, and everybody can see it, even nationally.
Yeah. Well, Jeff, it was different from the very beginning, because the process of how we brought in Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell was completely different than how everything was done before.
True.
It is the worst kept secret in sports that the Detroit Lions made a lot of their staffing decisions based off of relationships, people they knew, people they liked, and let's be honest, based off of a lack of stability and knowledge of how to run an NFL organization within ownership in the front office. I mean, when they brought in, like, even when they brought in, Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn, like that wasn't even to try and build something independently successful. It was to try and do New England, like it's essentially like New England in Detroit, which isn't going to work, right? Like to your point, the fact that they're doing something that embodies the city, that embodies the culture, but also something that fits the direction of the modern NFL and where the NFL is always going to be. Because like we talk about, like, whether or not it's a passing game, whether or not it's a running game. One thing that we're seeing in the NFL at all times is that it is a game that's controlled at the line of scrimmage. And the fact that we have been able to get, game changers on both sides of the ball, the first year getting Penei Sewell, a guy who looks like he has all the intangibles to be a Hall of Famer as an offensive lineman one day. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown, everything that he's been as well. But then the fact that we got not one, not two, but 3 future potential pass rushers in this last year's draft, and then 2 other starters on the defensive side of the ball as well. I mean, Jeff, like this rebuild is accelerated considerably.
And the Lions in past years, it always seemed like players that were homegrown, you either didn't pay or weren't able to pay, and players that you were drafted late just never panned out. So you had to go fill holes in free agency and go overpay for a Trey Flowers, go overpay for whoever it is. The Brad Holmes he's building things from the ground up, but you're building it through the draft. Now you have good players on rookie contracts. Like, it's the way of thinking, the process of it all, like valuing positions, right? If Brad Holmes was selecting the draft where we took Ebron instead of Martin Mayhew, he would never have taken Ebron. It would have been Aaron Donald every day of the week and twice on Sunday, because he sees the positional value. And I think that's what good general managers do. They look at value. Like Jameson Williams, that's value. He's falling in the draft, arguably the best wide receiver. Let me go up and get him. Aiden Hutchinson, the best player in the draft, falls to 2. No brainer. Let me take him. Don't try to be the smartest man in the room. Just do your job. And Brad does it at an extremely high level. He does.
Right. Well, and to your point, Jeff, not only like are they opening up their pocketbooks and are showing that they're going to be willing to do so when the time is necessary to pay, like when they do have salary cap space, but also they put their money where their mouth was this past offseason and made sure Ben Johnson was going to stay at least another season and come back as the offensive coordinator. I mean, we talked about how the biggest thing that was going to loom over this offseason before we could move forward was what was going to happen, with our coordinators. I mean, first of all, the fact that the Lions have coordinators that are actually interviewing for head coaching positions is something that I'm just not used to, because generally people aren't interested with who the Lions have in-house. The fact that we do is something that is just unprecedented. But
they go here to die. They go here to die, typically, assistants.
Yeah, but also, Jeff, like all reports suggested, Ben Johnson was the hottest name on the market other than Sean Payton. I mean, this was a guy that people were curious about, and for perfectly justifiable reasons, Jeff, because this guy completely overhauled our offense in a season, made it go like the first weeks of the Dan Campbell era. It did not look great when Anthony Lynn was running things. And now to be on the complete other side and to picture next season what they can do with cap space, how they can fill out that offense, but also what Ben Johnson can do with Jameson Williams healthy. I mean, Jeff, good Lord, how do you not get excited and dream about the possibilities there?
Yeah, if you want to know about somebody, see what other people say about them, specifically guys that are with them every day. I mean, Ben Johnson, when he was promoted and he was the passing game coordinator, you saw Jared Goff get better, talk highly of him. Amon-Ra St. Brown started breaking out, talked highly of him. Brock Wright talked highly of him. Like, and this is before he was OC. So when you're hearing this and me and Adam are covering this, it's like, yeah, this guy needs to be the OC. Like, this has to happen. You see the intangibles, you see what's happening with the scheme and how the offense is playing. And the fact that he was the hottest candidate besides Sean Payton, to your point, he chose to return to Detroit. Like, process that for a second. He wants to return to Detroit because he loves what they're building and he wants to be a part of it. And again, maybe that's other reasons as well, boosting his own stock. But regardless, to say that, Like that ties into everything we're talking about right now and what's changed with the organization. Good organizations, guys want to go, you want to go to work happy. If you love going to work, it makes your job a lot easier. And Ben, with the relationships he's established, Dan Campbell being a great groomer, he's grooming assistant coaches left and right. I mean, there's guys that I see on this staff, multiple guys that I think could be head coaches. So Ben Johnson, he's checked every single box, man, and what he's meant to this offense and this organization. It's incredible, man. And just for him to say that, I want to come back to Detroit, I think that just puts a little cherry on top of everything we're talking about right now.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm glad that you said that Dan Campbell's grooming, grooming assistant coaches and grooming future coaches, because a lot of people are, did look at the work that Ben Johnson has done, and people might be quick to not give credit to Dan Campbell for everything,
Right.
that the Lions have done over the last couple of years and the growth that they've taken. But, Sean Payton, I talked about him about a minute ago. He compared, he said that he told the Lions ownership group when they were interviewing Dan Campbell, he compared him to Mike Vrabel, but on the offensive side of the ball, like the physicality and the presence that he brings to his team, but also the knowledge and the savvy that he has for the game. I mean, that's a perfect balance to have. And I mean, Jeff, I know we talk all the time about how smart a lot of coaches are and like plays that they can draw up on a whiteboard. A lot of times, Jeff, I think we overlook the importance of a guy who can galvanize men, a guy who can lead a locker room, and a guy who can do the human element, because that is such a massive part of being an NFL head coach.
Yeah, especially when you're not walking into a roster of a talented roster where you can just be everyone's best friend. You could be a great coordinator. Like Dan walked into a rebuild, a complete rebuild, an organization that needed a lot of things, a culture change, like everything, a new brand of the Lions. And he did that. Like Dan fits all of those. And I'm glad you brought up him as an offensive coach, because I think that gets left out. Like Sean Payton said that, and that quote was talked about, but people look at Dan and they see the macho aura of him and they see these antics.
Yeah.
People don't know how savvy he really is. Like Ben even admitted it. Our game plan every week starts with the run game. Where do you think that stems from as well? Dan Campbell, Mr. Physical over there. Like he has a lot to do with this offense. I know Ben has a majority, but don't discredit Dan for his involvement either.
Well, and here's the other thing as well. All the time we talk about how Dan Campbell goes for it on fourth down, and the majority of the time you look at the stats and it's like you just think that it's reckless. But Jeff, how many times do you see what the Lions draw up on fourth down and you're completely off guard by the play call? Because they're doing something that's genuinely brilliant. Like, I know there's the photo of Penei Sewell diving with the ball in his hands that everyone loves to laugh at because it's one of the greatest images in the history of humanity, but also one of the smartest play calls in the entire season. And then the play that iced the Packers season at the end of the game as well, when they went for it on fourth down. Like, Jeff, like that's the thing about this Lions like coaching staff, is that there's some real intelligence here.
Yeah, you can't be passive. He's been aggressive. And again, whether you appreciate it or not, I know there's always two ways to look at it. If it works, he's the greatest. If he doesn't, everyone hates him. I'm even keel either way. I think it depends really on the situation. And one thing I could appreciate about Dan is even last year when you're 0-10, he wants to win games. Like he understands we're not just going to settle for a field goal here. No, we're going to go for it. And like the Green Bay Packers game you just brought up, the DJ Chark catch to ice the game. Go out and be aggressive. You see coaches all around the league doing it now with talented rosters, but the Lions have one of the better offenses. So why do you hate them for going for it? With that offensive line on 4th and 1, I can't hate it. And now it depends on the situation, of course, and what the time is on the clock. What all these things matter. But overall, that mindset for Dan, I don't think is a bad thing. I think people can appreciate it. I mean, especially how aggressive he's been. I mean, Dan, I think just brings a different thing we've seen. So everyone's like shocked by it, but look around the league, man. I mean, coaches are doing this. It's more popular, especially today.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Jeff, I do want to touch on a couple more things while I still have you here. Jared Goff, he was a guy that was coming into this season, was facing a lot of scrutiny, and then came out and had an all-pro season. At one point when we only had one win, the Lions we were talking about the Lions potentially drafting at number 1 overall and seriously looking at drafting a quarterback. Now we're talking about a draft where the Lions are going to be picking at 6th and 18th, and you can potentially go Jared Goff with a really solid defense, because Jeff, this draft has a lot of talent on the defensive side of the ball, a lot of corners, a lot of safeties, a lot of edge rushers, a lot of defensive tackles. Like, if the Lions want to bolster their defense, this is a hell of an opportunity to do so. But Jeff, at the same time, like, it's like kind of that interesting balance because, with Jared Goff, we've seen that he's played really well. We've seen like what he can do. There's still questions about what would happen once he gets to the playoffs. Would it be like a Kirk Cousins type effect? But do you want to be like the Chiefs where you try to win a lot of games, stay like keep your head above water, build a really good program, and then when you find a quarterback you fall in love with, you pull the trigger and draft them? Or do you fall the risk of what the 49ers have, where you have this Super Bowl caliber roster, but you just don't know what the answer is at quarterback? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And I think with Jared too, you look at the Super Bowl right now, two best teams, I think, offensive line and defensive line. You can make an argument. So that's what matters. The Lions are building that. They already have one of the better offensive lines, and that defensive line is coming together. So the conversation about replacing Jared to me is premature. I think people probably seem to still, bring up his Rams days and how it ended and being traded away. And that narrative is always going to surround him. But people don't understand, like, Jared's 28 years old. Like, like people act like he's 34 years old. He's getting, the guy's 28 years old. And to be honest with you, his contract, as much people as they want to bring it up, $30 million in today's NFL compared to
not terrible
for a guy that I would argue is the second best quarterback behind Jalen Hurts, and maybe you could say Aaron, but I don't think Aaron will be in the NFC. So next year it'll be Jared Goff and maybe Matthew Stafford. But even then, Jared's had a better year. So that's the part I think people have to understand is people want to talk about the quarterback position. Obviously, it's the most important position on the field. But let's just get to a playoff game first before we start talking about Jared Goff. I think all this stuff is so premature. Can Jared Goff win a playoff game? Yes. Can he get to an NFC title game? Yes, he's done that. Coaching
he's gone to a Super Bowl, for God's sake.
Absolutely. He's gone to a Super Bowl. So if Dan Campbell's the coach we think he is, Jared Goff, until he's the problem, until he's the one holding you back, like Kirk maybe in Minnesota, then we can have a discussion. Or he has to get re-upped for $45 million a year. We can have that discussion. But until then, Jared Goff to me is perfectly okay. You know how many teams in the league would want Jared Goff right now? I mean, people forget that too. So the Jared Goff narrative to me is, should they take a quarterback this year in the draft? I would say no. If they do, will I be upset? No, it's Brad. I would trust the process. But to some other teams that are dealing with this right now, if that quarterback does not work out, your ass is on the hot seat. Like, go to the Jets. Zach Wilson, if they thought he was going to be, he's going to make that progression every single year. Look at him now, borderline out of the league. And now they're trying to figure out what they're going to do at the quarterback position. Quarterback is one of the hardest, probably the hardest position to figure out. So
without a doubt,
need to take a chill pill on Jared Goff like he's some bum. The guy was top 6 in multiple categories this year.
Oh, for sure. And that's my argument, Jeff. I'm right there with you where, like again, before Patrick Mahomes, the Kansas City Chiefs were a very good football team. They won 11, 12 games a year with Alex Smith under center. And even though he might not have been blowing anyone away, he had all pro seasons. He had points where he was playing really good football. He didn't make many mistakes. He didn't turn the ball over much. He got the ball to his playmakers. And there were times where the Chiefs could have actually made a little bit of a run if everything came together. So I think, like you're seeing in the NFC as well, so many teams are winning and are doing what they're doing with complete rosters and not asking their quarterback to do too much. Right. And I think, I think you can win a lot of football games doing that. And I think, as we're building like this foundation of the Detroit Lions, like it's the exact same thing like we talk about with the Pistons, where you're building this team for the long term. Like, we're not just building like a really good football team that can try to compete for a Super Bowl. We're trying to build a program that can last and trying to change the course and the culture of what the Lions are going forward. And so in order for that to like take place, like there are going to have to be those like foundational changes.
And you heard Brad too talk about it. It's much easier to downgrade at quarterback than it is to upgrade. Everyone thinks, oh yeah, we'll just take this guy and we'll upgrade. No, it's not that. It's actually not that easy. Jared Goff might be your best option. So I think we both kind of summed it up perfectly. Jared right now, last of my problems, fix the defense. If you had a better defense this year, let's say top 15, you probably would have won 10, 11 games. Like with this roster, with the problems in the secondary, like people act like Jared was holding them back. And now, beginning of the year, through some picks, I get that. But also, it's hard when your defense can't get a stop. And like, so again, there's two ways to look at it. So with Jared, I think to see him and how he's kind of changed the narrative with his career so far makes me ecstatic. I think he's becoming more and more comfortable with the idea of being in Detroit. Now, when the contract negotiations get here, we'll get to it. But until then, right now, man, I'm cool with Jared Goff. I really am.
Yeah, exactly. Again, it's until he gives you a reason to not trust. You don't have,
Absolutely.
and it's important that you have people at the top that have believed in him from day one.
Hmm.
And again, he's shown with the pieces around him that he can make some noise, man. I mean, like bloody hell, that guy can fling a football. One last football question for you. Like I brought up, the Lions do have the 6th and 18th pick in the first round. I know over the coming months you're going to be doing a whole lot of big boards and a whole lot of mock drafts, and I know that your answer is going to change a lot over the coming months. But if it was up to you today, ideal scenario, Jeff Iafrate gets the choice of what happens at the very least for the first round of the Lions draft.
Yeah.
Jeff Iafrate, what do you do?
So I'm trying to trade back because the teams behind the Lions right now, they need a quarterback bad. And if Brad can kind of fake this signal, like, we might take a quarterback and get these guys inquiring about that pick, if you could trade back 3-4 spots, get to 9-10, and you could still get the guy you wanted at 6, maybe the best corner
I don't
available.
know though, man. Who's going to be there with like the Texans and the Colts are right up there. The Panthers could trade right up there too. Like it could be crazy with the mobility and the movement up at the top.
Yeah, absolutely. Got the Colts that might trade up. Who knows with
Yep.
that? So there's going to be quarterbacks. Anthony Richardson, he'll probably go top 10 in my opinion. You got Will Levis, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud. They're probably going to go somewhere in the top 5. So the Lions have that pick at 6. Teams are going to be interested. If you can trade back, we're talking about ideal. Like I don't know if that'll
Right.
happen, but this is my
Right.
scenario. You trade
Right.
back, you get to 9 or 10.
That's fair.
You
My
could
bad.
pick-
My bad. This is your scenario.
yeah, this is it's my little world, Sean. All right, let me live. All right, so we're trading back. We're trading back in my world. We're getting a 9 or 10. You could take the best corner, Witherspoon, Ringo, whoever you like. And at 18, depending on who's there, to me, it's really best player available, defensive lineman, whoever it is. But to me, both picks in that first round, you got to take defensive players. Now, if you want to pitch me a quarterback, I'll listen. I'll probably most likely stop listening after the first 25 seconds. But after, the first 25, you got me. But for me, it's got to be 2 defensive players, man.
Yeah.
No doubt.
I don't think there's a quarterback that is a significantly greater prospect than what I think Jared Goff is. So I don't think there's a reason for them to use any of those picks in this draft class. If this is a class where, there was like a Justin Fields type prospect or, like a Lamar Jackson or a Patrick Mahomes, like that, like something where you really feel like they could sit a year and really make something happen. Maybe, but I don't think that's there. I personally, I see, I see what you can do and what edge talent falls to you at 6. Do you see if you can possibly somehow walk out of there with Jalen Carter? Do you see if you can possibly walk away with like a Brian Brees? Like there's so many guys like up at the top of this draft, in my opinion, that can help like right away. And it's like you add another awesome edge rusher alongside Aiden Hutchinson and James Houston and Josh Pascal, who I know he wasn't really healthy and couldn't show fully what he could do. I think if he's healthy going into next year, I mean, he'll show why he was the number 1, graded pass rusher by Pro Football Focus going into the draft last year. Like that could potentially be 4 dominant rushing, like edge rushers or pass rushers in general for the Lions to work with.
And look at the NFC Championship game, 49ers, Eagles. Probably you could argue the 2 most deepest defensive lines in the league. So you're absolutely like the idea, we have James Houston, don't take an edge rusher. Are you crazy? Like if there's somebody at 9 or 10 that you like, a Tyree Wilson who could play inside or Miles Murphy who could play inside, anybody, you take them. And at 18, you could take the best corner. But again, you risk that scenario of you have to take the guy that falls to you at 18. There might be some of the better corners already taken. So there's a lot of different scenarios. And this is why I think this is the most or the least stressed I've been going into a draft, because it's like, all right, Brad, let him cook. Like let Brad cook, because whoever gets taken, there's a all
right, Brad, let's go.
Let him cook. So I'm not as stressed about it, but yeah, there's a lot of different scenarios. This draft, I think, is deep too. Like like you said, it's not top heavy, but it's more spaced out. You might be able to get value still at 18. So there's plenty to look forward to. Really.
100%.
You got 2nd round picks, you got 3rd round picks, like a lot of options. You could trade up with those picks. Like who knows? If Jalen Carter falls, Brad wants to package some picks, move up to get them. Like, man, there's unlimited amount of opportunities for Brad.
Yeah, for sure. Jeff, this was a blast, man. We get to talk basketball together all the time. Being able to hop on and talk some football together, dude, this was a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Again, dude.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. I'm definitely going to have you on again real soon. I'm super pumped to talk next week about the trade deadline and everything that happens. By the way, if the Pistons somehow walk out with Grant Williams, I think I might have to drive to Detroit and like whatever, like we might have to like throw
Hey,
like a crazy party this weekend.
that's been your guy. That's been your guy.
Oh,
You've been talking about Grant for months on months.
oh,
So yeah, it'll be hype. And by the way, to end this, Chiefs are winning that thing. I'm going with the Chiefs. Just to sprinkle it.
Okay. There you have
There
it.
you go. We'll revisit this in a week and see if I look stupid or not.
Oh, yeah. I'm excited for it. You can catch Jeff Iafrate Monday through Friday on the Morning Woodward Show from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Jeff, one of the best looking guys in the business. Also, I'm from Half Court every Wednesday as well. Jeff, thanks so much for being here, man.
I got you, dude. No problem. Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much to my guy, Jeff Iafrate, for joining and talking the Super Bowl and the Lions. That was just a lot of fun, man. Jeff and I get to join together and talk about basketball all the time. But the fact that we were able to, just sit there and talk football, man, that was just a lot of fun. But the last thing I want to touch on today for Mornings with the Murph, last night, LeBron James surpassed Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in the third quarter, scoring 36 points in 3 quarters to become the all-time leading scorer in the National Basketball Association. LeBron James, in his 20th year at the age of 38, with his 2 sons in front row, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar there as well, Phil Knight of Nike sitting with his sons as well, and every celebrity that you could possibly name in front row in attendance to watch LeBron break the feat. And I have been a person for a long time who has been an unapologetic Michael Jordan stan. I have been someone who wore arguing that Michael Jordan was the GOAT as a badge of honor, and something that I almost did in a prideful way. I'm done making that argument because there's no argument to make. LeBron James is the greatest player of all time. He is now first all time in points. He is fourth all time in assists, has the potential to set that record as well. He is one of the greatest defensive players of all time. He's one of the greatest playmakers of all time. He's one of the most efficient scorers for his volume of all time. Everything that LeBron's done throughout his career has taken what Michael did and almost surpassed it. The fact that he was able to go and essentially dominate a conference for a decade. I understand Michael was able to essentially do that same thing, get to the finals and get 2 3-peats. That is an impressive feat in itself, but the amount of talent in the NBA today compared to then is night and day. And the fact that LeBron was able to rule that conference for that long, and sure, he's lost more finals than he's won, but the fact that he's been to as many finals as he's been, the fact that you couldn't have the conversation about who was going to win the championship without LeBron James being involved. In fact, LeBron James was dominating the game in 2005. He was one of the best players in the world. That's when I started watching basketball. I was 8. I'm now an analyst and a content creator and someone who's been following the game religiously my entire life. And LeBron is still dominating. I'm 25. He's still going out and outrunning fools. LeBron looks like it doesn't even take a sweat off his brow. The fact that LeBron's done all this and he was able to go out and do it in such fashion, that was one of my favorite basketball moments in a long time. I got emotional watching it and seeing Kareem hand him the ball, center court, Adam Silver congratulate LeBron James, and for them to pause and have that awesome tribute video on the Jumbotron as well. By the way, massive L that we have to see all that with a big Crypto.com logo on there, but that's neither here nor there. What really matters is LeBron James's overall impact on the league, on the game, on our society. I mean, this is one of the greatest stories in American history. I mean, LeBron James, being a kid from Akron with a single mom whose dad was, walked out on him, to grow up and essentially rise up through youth sports and through his gifts in athletics and being a leader, and for him to always do the right thing, to never hear any rumors of LeBron, being in trouble or any mischief, for him to be donned the chosen one by Sports Illustrated when he was 18, and to not only go out and live that prophecy, but exceed it. What else makes you the greatest of all time? I don't know what does. I mean, Michael Jordan might be the best player who's ever played basketball. I saw someone say that you could argue that Michael's the best ever and LeBron's the GOAT. I personally think it's semantics at that point. And I still think that I still don't think you're crazy for thinking that Michael Jordan is the GOAT. But for me personally, with the overwhelming sample size, if you go to clutch stats, it's LeBron. If you go points and efficiency, it's LeBron. If you go to elevating your teammates, it's LeBron. It's all LeBron. I mean, the 2017-2018 Warriors, those teams happened because of LeBron. He started the player empowerment era. He changed how players look at preparing their bodies. He's setting the standard of what NBA players can do and how long their careers can last. I mean, LeBron James has the greatest longevity and the greatest durability of any NBA player that we've ever seen. And as great as Michael Jordan was, he didn't have that. And so, whether LeBron James wins another championship or not, he's cemented his legacy. And to be able to tune in, even someone who's considered myself a LeBron critic for an overwhelming period of my life, I can't help but sit back and witness and appreciate greatness. And I think that's what each and every one of us should be pausing and reflecting on today. There's a reality that in the next few years, LeBron James might not be playing basketball. He might retire. And just like Tom Brady, who was a star for almost a quarter of a century in a league who was a fixture in all of our living rooms. Let's appreciate the greatness while we have it, folks. Especially while we don't know how long we have them. Whether we don't know how long we have them on this court, how long we have them on this earth. I just wish Kobe could have been there, man. I was really glad that Kareem was in the building, that Kareem was able to be here for this moment to give LeBron that ball for them, even though they've had their weird spats and moments in public, that they were able to embrace and still have that moment together. It was a good night for the NBA. And it was a great night for the world of sports. With that, I want to thank you all so much for listening and tuning in to Mornings with the Murph. Be sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any content coming on this channel. And Mornings with the Murph premiere Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 10 a.m. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys Friday for Mornings with the Murph.